Hi, I'm Pam East. This is part two of Design Exploration for People Who Can't Draw. In part one, I discussed drawing techniques with a paper and pencil, and I'm going to be expanding on those ideas in digital drawing. If you haven't already watched part one, I suggest you go back and do that now. You will want to have seen that first because I am going to be expanding on those concepts. To get started with digital drawing, all you're going to need is a digital device with a touchscreen and a drawing app. It can be Android, it can be Apple, iPhone, iPad, it can be any drawing app, because I'm only going to be showing you 5 tools, and they're 5 tools that pretty much every single drawing app out there has. So whatever you have is going to work. The other thing that you're going to need is a stylus of some kind. And drawing with your finger doesn't really work that well. Your body and your mind is used to holding a drawing implement, and you're going to do better if you're holding something. So like on the iPad, I have the little Apple Pencil, which is fantastic. This is like the Cadillac of drawing devices. But you don't absolutely need that. This is an iPhone, and this is an Android, and this is a just a stylus. It's a third-party stylus that I bought on Amazon. It's very inexpensive, and you can use this. Let me get a better color going there. Something you can see. All right, so there we go. So you can use a drawing stylus like this to draw on any of these devices. That's what you need to get started. And then I'm going to show you the 5 tools that you need to do pretty much everything we did with paper and pencil, but take it to the next level. So what are the 5 tools? They are the pen, the eraser, the undo, the import, and layers. So layers is where people start going, oh no, I don't know what to do. Trust me, I'm going to show you. It's not that difficult. Once you get the concept, it's going to make everything so much easier. You're just going to love it, I promise. And we're only going to be using those 5 tools. I'm not trying to turn you into a graphic designer. I'm trying to show you how to do simple design exploration and design development using a digital pad the way you might use paper and pencil. For demonstration purposes, I will be using my iPad Pro with the pencil, and I will be using a software app called Amaziograph. See, this says Amaziograph right there. Now, Amaziograph is a very inexpensive drawing tool. It's like 99 cents in the Apple Store. And it's my favorite. Again, if you don't have if you don't have an iPad, because Amaziograph is only for iPad, if you don't have iPad, there are a million other drawing apps out there: Sketchbook, Drawing Desk, Procreate, Procreate Pocket. Procreate Pocket is for the iPhone. There's a lot of different things out there that you can be using, and they all are going to have the 5 tools. But here's my demo, and I'm going to start by opening up a drawing. And on Amaziograph, it wants you to choose some sort of symmetry. The program is designed for symmetry, but you don't have to use the symmetry, and I like the tools. So I'm going to go ahead and just use mirror. So if I just start drawing on this, you'll see that it's mirroring my drawings, right? I don't want that right now. Right now, I just want a blank screen. So undo, get rid of that. And I'm going to turn off the symmetry. So up here, it says draw with symmetry, and I'm just going to turn that off. And now it's just a regular drawing program. So let's talk about the pen. And when I say pen, I'm not talking about my stylus. I'm talking about the little pen tool that is on the app. And every drawing app is going to have a pen tool. And when you touch it, it's going to bring up a lot of things that you can adjust. You can change the size, you can change the color. Some of those things you can do right on screen, like for example, in Amaziograph, it lets me change the size right here. Got a little slider, and I can do like that, or I can make it real tiny, or I can make it real fat, and it's right there on the screen. But if it's not on the screen, touch the pen tool, and your little pen things are going to come out. The more fancy the program, the more pen choices you have. All you need is a basic line. Don't get really crazy with it. And they're all going to have a basic line. So that's your pen tool. Next, I'm going to talk about the undo button. And undo, this is the equivalent of Control Z, right? We all know about undo. And I've screwed it up and I want to go back a few steps. And that's quick and easy. I want to get rid of these lines that I drew. So an undo button is like a little backward arrow. Again, everything's going to have that. All right, so what's next? The eraser tool. So let me make a line. And I'm going to tell you that I use my eraser like a pen. So I'll use my eraser almost as much as I use my pen. And so here's my little eraser tool is right here. And I can zoom. This is where digital becomes really powerful, is that I can zoom way in or I can zoom way out and I can get a different view of what I'm doing. If I'm trying to draw along the edge, that's really hard if something's zoomed way out. So I'm going to zoom way in. And let's say I want to make a little tapered end there. So I've got my eraser tool on. And just like the pen, I can change the size of the eraser tool. So I can make it really small and it'll just do a thin line, or I can make it really thick and it'll do a big bunch. So I'm going to make it thin, and that's going to give me a lot of control, and I can start refining this line and making it more of a taper. So you see that now it comes to a tapered end instead of a fat end. This is just how to use an eraser. And remember that you can zoom in and out. That's going to become very important. So that's the eraser tool. So what is that? That's 3 now. We've done the pen, we've done the eraser, we've done the undo. Import is going to be out. It's not in your drawing area. It's out where your drawings live. So I'm going to back out of this. And when I first open the program, this is the screen that I come to. And here's all of my various drawings that I've done. And right up here in the corner, it says import. Some apps, it's just going to say the word import. In other apps, it's going to look like a little picture. But either way, it's a way to bring a picture into the software. So let's import something. And I don't know if you know this, but you can often search your photos. Like let's say I wanted to just look at leaves. I can put in leaf, search, and it's going to bring up all my photos that have leaves. They may have other things, but they're going to have leaves in them. So you can actually search your photos, which is really nice. But I have some leaves here. I'm going to grab a leaf and I'm going to import it. Now in Amaziograph, it's kind of weird because I don't see the picture until I open that. It's just my most recent import is going to be right here. When I go back out, it shows. But initially, it just shows up as a blank. So when I go in here, you can see that there's this grid. I don't know, can you see it? There's a grid overlaying that. There we go. There's a grid overlaying that leaf. And again, remember, Amaziograph wants to do symmetry. Other apps are not going to do this. If I had brought this into Procreate, or if I had brought it into Sketchbook or Drawing Desk, it wouldn't have this grid over it. I just happen to really like these tools, so that's what I choose to use. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to turn off Draw with Symmetry, and now it's just a regular drawing pad. So let's say I want to trace this leaf. So now we've looked at import. We've looked at 4 of the 5 tools, right? Pen, eraser, undo, and import. So now I want to trace this leaf. Well, if I draw directly on here, I can't then get rid of the leaf and just have my drawing. I have to put tracing paper over it. Remember in the first video, when I was putting tracing paper and doing trace and refine, we're going to do the exact same thing with layers. Layers is tracing paper. It's digital tracing paper. I'm just going to lay a piece of digital tracing paper over this leaf, and then I can trace it without drawing directly on the photo. So all programs that have layers, the icon looks like little stacked papers. It might be 3 stacked or 2 stacked. Mine is right up here, and there's going to be a little plus sign. And when I hit that plus sign, I've added a layer. So notice that layer 2 is above layer 1. And that's important because if I put my tracing paper under my drawing and then draw, I'm drawing on my drawing and not my tracing paper. My tracing paper has to be on top of my drawing. So here's my layer, and it's over my picture. Now, unlike actual tracing paper, you can't see it the way you see tracing paper, but it's there, and I'll show you how to find out how that's working. All right. Oh, and the other thing I want to show you is that the gray bar is the one that you're drawing on. If I switch down to here and now the gray bar is the leaf, that means when I start drawing, I'm drawing on the photo and not the layer. I need to highlight the one that I am actually going to be drawing on. All right, so here we are, and now I want to trace that. Now, if I start tracing like this, it's really hard for me to draw a long straight line. So zoom in, do it in little short, oops, that's fatter than I want. Undo. And now I'm going to take that down and make it a thinner line. And now I can start drawing, and I can just move this. By zooming in and working in shorter little sections, I can get a more accurate trace. Undo, I'm going to do an undo there because I didn't like that. So there's no cost here. I'm not wasting materials. I'm not wasting paper. I'm not wasting ink. You know, I can do this over and over and over. If I make a mistake, I can just hit undo. So it's very easy. And you can just take your time, slow down. It's not a race. Right, so I've got my, all right, so there's the center line of my leaf. Now I'm going to go a little faster now. And I'm going to start tracing the outside of this leaf. And you don't have to be exact. You're just more or less getting the proportions, actual leaf proportions right. And notice how I move things around to make it easier to draw. You know, you don't have to keep it in one spot. You don't have to keep it at one level of zoom. You can change the zoom. You can change the, you know, if I couldn't tell what was going on in a spot, I can zoom in closer so that I can see it easier. I'm only going to do half this leaf because I don't want to be here all day. And this is all real time. I'm not speeding this up or anything. All right, so there I have done half a leaf. So how do I see what I traced? If I go back out to the layers menu, there's a little eye. And again, this is very consistent from program to program. There's a little eye. And if I close that eye, whoops, now I've turned off the picture. It's still there. I can turn it back on whenever I want, but I can turn it off to see my trace. And I've got half a leaf. I could go out and do more, but you get the ideas that you can trace these pictures that you went out and took to start developing a design. In part 1, I did a design based off of a patio chair, a wrought iron patio chair. So let's do the same thing again. Let me bring in that patio chair again, and let's try and develop a design from that. But this time we're going to do it digitally. All right, so the first thing I need to do is here, I got to get out of this leaf drawing, and I'm going to import the picture. And there's that patio chair. And remember what I said, it always comes up as a blank in Amaziograph. It probably won't do that in other apps. I've just gotten used to it. And when I open it up, it's got this grid over it, and I've got to turn off the symmetry. And this is only Amaziograph that makes you do that. All the other programs don't have that. I have a lot of reasons, though, for using Amaziograph because the tools are super easy to use. And everything's really, it's just right there and accessible. All right, so there it is. There's my chair, and I'm gonna open up a layer, right? Because I want to lay some tracing paper over that. So I'm gonna hit plus on my layer, Here's layer 2. It's highlighted, so that's where I'm drawing. And now I can start to trace this. And remember that I can zoom in as needed. Now the pen is on 10 right now, which is pretty thick. I'm going to take that down to 5, and I'm going to start tracing. Now, black on a wrought iron chair doesn't show up really well. So just to show you real quick, I can close that eye, and I am getting that trace. I can see it better from here. It may not show up as well on the video, but we'll see. All right, so I'm going to zoom in out a little bit. And I'm going to start getting this design. And I'm going to turn it whatever way I need to make it easy to trace. You don't have to keep it in one orientation. You know, make it whatever works for you. And I'm just tracing these openings right now. And I don't want to do all of them. I'm going to do 5 of them. I like odd numbers. It would either be 3 or 5. So I'm going to do 5 of these openings. And now I'm going to do this outside part. All right, so let's see what we've got. I'm going to turn off the eye. And here's what I have so far. Is I've got this interesting little design going. I've got this, and I'm gonna develop this into some kind of design. But I don't want to draw on this. This is my original trace, and I don't want to have to go back and trace it again. So I'm going to put another piece of tracing paper over it. I'm going to come up here to layers. I'm going to hit plus, and now I have a new piece of tracing paper. And notice that this layer, it's above layer 2, so it's sitting on top of it. And it's highlighted, so I know that I'm drawing on that particular layer. And so now, you know, if I come in and I start working on it and I do all kinds of weird stuff, I go, oops, that isn't what I wanted. I can come up here, and even without any undo, I can just turn off that layer and voila, it's gone. Or I can even delete that layer. There, it's gone. So but my original trace is still there. So let's go ahead and add that layer. And now I'm going to start developing this. So what do I want to do with it? So I make jewelry. So for me, everything is about a pendant, and I need an outside shape to work in. And in my paper and pencil version, I use this kite shape. So let me see if I can just use that again. So first I'm going to turn this a little bit so I can make it a little smaller. And then I can start laying this on there and start seeing, well, that's kind of interesting. I kind of like that. So let me go ahead and draw around that. So yeah, I'm using an actual template on my tablet, on my digital drawing. So you can still use your templates. And that's on layer 3, right? So layer 3 has now got that on there. And so I like that, and I like that. I'm going to open up another layer because I don't want to mess this up. I want to try things, but be able to go back really quickly and try different things. So let's go ahead and open up another layer. And you can just open up dozens and dozens of these. You can have layer after layer after layer. And you can turn them on and off so that you can look at different parts of your design. I mean, I could always bring back the original chair seat that I started with, or I can make that go away. All right, so here we are. I've got this design going. I'm going to make my my pen a little thicker, and I'm going to start filling in. I'm going to start filling in this trace. And all right, so now how does that look without the trace? I'm going to turn off the trace. That's getting a little better. It may not be exactly what I want, but it's a start. And the other thing I can do now, I could add a new layer. So now I could trace over it with a different color so that I know that, you know, I know which is which, right? I can use a different color. So I've switched to blue and I want to refine this. Did I open a new layer? I did. Okay. So I'm on a new layer and I want to start refining this. So now I'm going to turn off the black layer. See, that's starting to look a little better. And so this is that trace and refine, trace and refine, trace and refine that we did with paper and pencil, only now we're doing it digitally. And the cool thing is I can go back and I can turn on and off different parts of it to see how it looks with different variables. Let's play with it a little more. So here we go. I've got a nice little design going, but remember, what we want to do is refine. And when you're refining your designs, there's things that you can do with digitally that are a lot harder to do with paper and pencil. Zooming in and out is a big one. Another thing is, all right, I'm going to go ahead and change the color. Normally, I told you I was only going to do 5 tools. I am going to add a 6th one here, and that's the bucket fill tool because every drawing program has it. It looks like a bucket with a drop spilling out of it. I'm going to go to that, and I'm going to make this blue part black, boop, because it's easier for me to see the design that way. For me, this is visually more striking. All right, so going back to my pen, I want to start refining this. So look at this end. See how bumpy, lumpy this is? I can take my pen down to, you know, 2 or 3, make it really small. Oops, I'm still on blue. Undo, black, and I can start smoothing it out. And by zooming way in, it's a lot easier to do that smoothing. See how much nicer that looks now? To come in really close and start fixing things up. You know, maybe I want to erase something. So here I'm going to grab my eraser tool, also going to take it down to a small size. And I'll come in and I'll clean up this edge. Oops, I can't erase. Notice I cannot erase this. If you're trying to erase something and it's not erasing, you weren't on the right layer to do that. So if I want to get rid of this little thing that came off, I would have to go to my layers. My iPad is upside down at this point. This is on this outline layer. I'd go to that layer, and now I can erase on that layer. But I can't erase anything over here because I'm not on that layer. So I'm going to go back to the layer I want to work on. And erasing is like another way of drawing. So I refined with, you know, by drawing. Here's my drawing tool. But this is getting too close together, so I want to actually erase to refine. And I just use it like another drawing tool. So again, I'm keeping the pen size small, and I can come right in and I can start refining what this looks like. I'm not really worried about that blue halo. Ultimately, that's going to be gone. You know, here, oops. Well, I'm going to use undo. If I do a big oops, I always use undo for that. I want to come in here. Again, I'm going to use my eraser tool to bring this in. Maybe I'm going to bring it way in, further than it was before. Give it kind of a nice little, coming to a nice little point there. And you can see how it's starting to refine. This is how you can refine things. And doing it digitally is just so much easier than doing it with paper and pencil. You can only erase a piece of paper so many times. Whereas with a digital drawing, you can do it as much as you want. I can work on this for hours, for days, for weeks. And I do. You know, when I'm doing a design, I can work on it for a while and I get tired and I put it away, I pull it out, work on it some more. And it can take me a really long time. You need to be patient. You need to get into the process and just go with it, see what happens. And there's no risk, because you don't like something, undo it or turn off that layer or hit on, you know, or hit it or erase it. No one's going to be judging or grading these. Like I said in version 1, this is just for you. It's not for anyone else. And that's starting to look a lot better. Here, let me zoom that out a little bit. I'll turn it, zoom it out so you can see it better. And it's getting more refined looking as I go along. So you get the idea. Let's dive a little bit deeper into layers and how they work, because that's the key to this whole thing. If you can really grasp that, you can make a lot of progress with your drawing. Here is my drawing, right? And it's got layers. We know that it's got layers. So let me open those up again and show them to you. Here we have, let's see, I'm gonna get this a little closer to the camera. I've got the original drawing, I've got the original trace, then I've got that outside shape, then I filled it in messily, and then I did another layer to refine it. And right now you can see that some of the little eyes have a cross through them, meaning that they're closed. I'm not looking at them. And some of them are open. The only two that are open are the refined drawing and the outside shape. And that gave me this. So hopefully that's making sense. But just in case it's not, I have gone ahead and printed out each one of these layers on transparency so you can see how this works. So here is the original drawing on a piece of paper, right? So there's the original drawing. So what if I was just doing this with paper and pencil rather than digital? It's the same. And I printed on transparency so it's clear like the layers are. So these are all of my layers that I did. Those are all the layers. It's the same thing. So the first thing I did was I traced. So I put this layer over the drawing and I traced it. And there's that trace. And then I did the jewelry shape. So I wanted to have a jewelry shape, and I really liked this. So there's my jewelry shape sitting on top of that. Then I did kind of a messy fill-in. It was just starting to decide which parts of the design I wanted to work with. And then I did a refined version. And that's what you're looking at right now is as if every one of the eyes were open, all the layers were visible. So let me show that. So if all of these were open, right? It looks just like this. It's exactly the same thing. Each layer, each piece of transparency is a layer. And I can only draw on, on one at a time. So there we go. I've got that. Now, if I want to turn off the layers that don't contribute to my design, that would be the same as pulling out. I'm going to pull out the paper, the original trace, and the messy drawing. Whoops, that was between. There we go. And voila, I'm left with that. And you can see it's the same, but it's two pieces of paper, two pieces of transparency. The outline on one, the drawing on the other. And if this piece is on top, if I'm drawing on this one, I can't do anything to the one underneath it. I can also reorder them. I could put this one underneath that one. When they're both open, it looks the same, but now I can erase this outside edge, but I can't do anything to the design underneath. And that's what we mean when we're talking about which one of these layers are we working on. And that's the important concept I wanted to get to. So I can choose which one of these layers. I don't have to restack them like I would if it was tracing paper. I can just choose which layer I'm going to draw on. Be aware of which layer you're drawing on. It's very easy to lose track and start drawing on the wrong layer. So like if I'm down here and on my base layer, which is my drawing, and I start and I start doing some kind of tracing on this, well, guess what? I can't turn off the picture and not turn off what I just drew because it's on the drawing itself. So be aware of which layer you're on. You don't want to draw on your base layer. Um, Hopefully that's making a lot more sense, and seeing each layer worked out as transparencies made it a little more clear, and that's really going to help your drawing. So one last thing before I sign off, I want to take you through a design concept all the way through to the finished project. This isn't going to take very long. It's just some photos. But it began when a customer called me and they wanted a very specific pendant. They wanted one pendant that had a hummingbird, a pearl, a gemstone, and a little message. And that's a lot for one small piece of jewelry. And so there's a real challenge there for trying to get that to come out looking like something nice. And I wanted to show you the various steps that I went through to get there. And I started with paper and pencil. I did pull out paper and pencil, and I started drawing jewelry shapes. And I was throwing the little elements in here and there. And which shape did I like? Did I like this shape? Did I like that shape? Could I fit it? Could I not fit it? And then ultimately, I hit onto this idea of having the pendant be two parts, and the circle with the kind of yin yang going on, and the message would be hidden inside. Because you may or may not have heard this, but you always want kind of odd numbers with things. And so 4 elements wasn't going to balance well, but 3 elements I can balance. So if I had the hummingbird, the pearl, and the gem, that gave me a nice balance that I could work with. But then, and then I could have the message on the inside hidden that you could pull out and look at later. So I got all that. And then it was, all right, I don't do representational art. How am I going to do a hummingbird? I've never drawn a hummingbird. And so I started trying to figure out a stylized version. Again, I'm still on paper and pencil. I'm using brushes now instead of, pens or pencils, and trying to come up with what would look kind of stylized, because I knew I was going to have to do a photopolymer plate, and it had to be dramatically black and white in order for the photopolymer plate to work out. And so I started drawing these stylized things, and then it was like, I need to get the proportions right. And I started looking at pictures of hummingbirds. And I must have looked at, I don't know, dozens and dozens of pictures of hummingbirds. And ultimately, I kind of settled on this sort of look, and I had to start stylizing it. And that's when I switched from paper and pencil to digital. I pulled the photo into my digital format, put a layer over the top, and I started tracing. And it was very crude to begin with. But as I went along, I turned off the original and just looked at my trace, and I started refining it. Now, the tracing of the actual hummingbird gave me the proper proportions, which is really important, but from there, I stylized it by tracing my tracings. And I did layer after layer after layer until I got to this stylized, yet still elegant and hummingbird-like image. I used that to create a mock-up for the customer of what I thought the piece would look like. I did this mock-up in my Silhouette software. Silhouette is great for this kind of thing. I was able to bring in the hummingbird, and I had the yin and yang to work with, and I put it all together there, and I gave her the mock-up and said, here's what I'm going to make for you. She approved it, and once she approved it, then I was able to make the pendant. And here's how the pendant turned out. You can see that, I've got my hummingbird, I've got my pearl. It turned out just like I drew it. And I've got my little hanging gemstone, and then it opens up and I have the little message inside. So that is a design from beginning to end and how I developed it. And hopefully this video and this whole video series, part 1 and part 2, have encouraged you to start drawing just for yourself if nobody else. Now, obviously, with the design development for a customer, I had to show her the finished drawing. But for your own work, that's just for yourself, you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry about the judgment. All you need to worry about is how do I develop ideas? You can do it with the paper and pencil, like I showed in part one. You can do it digitally, like I showed in part two. I just want you to get out there and start drawing. And thank you for staying with me through this whole thing, and I'll see you next time.